Grab a cigarette and a beer. You ain't going nowhere. Welcome to the power movement.
Welcome to the Powell Movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and now that we've broken the 100-episode barrier, it's back to business as usual. And speaking of business, I used to have a lot more business-related episodes with industry insiders on the show. And while I've wanted to post a business episode, I've had so many great athlete ones that I've recorded that I didn't want to just sit on. I wanted you to hear them. But if you're a fan of pulling back the curtain and seeing what is going on behind the scenes, you'll get a lot more of that in 2019. For now, it's Christmas. And while I was not raised on giving Christmas gifts, I think Christmas is a way more fun holiday than Hanukkah. But who cares about the holidays? If you're listening, it's because you want to hear a fun podcast, and I have one for you this week. My guest is Eric Jackson, a pro snowboarder who seems like one of those dudes that you just want to sit down and have a beer or 10 with. He's also a guy that's had to battle through injuries and sponsors not believing in him, which is a tough thing to do when you're a professional athlete. A situation like that can ruin the mindset of the injured rider, and Eric had to power through all of the bullshit to put himself in a position to win awards, film with the best, and travel to shred as much as possible. Before we get into it, I want to ask you to follow me on Instagram at The Powell Movement, tell your friends about the show, and get off the couch and hit the mountain. I'm about to do the same thing as the summit at Snoqualmie is opening this week, and that's where I have a pass. I want to thank Andy Cantor and Guy Loris for setting that up for me and make sure I can enjoy the closest mountain to Seattle. I also need to thank Austin Lawrence over at Pro Bar for sending the amazing care package of bars. While I'm not a healthy foods guy, these things tasted really good and they were free, so I ate all of them. Finally, I want to thank my sponsors of the show. They are Evo, Rescue Water, Outdoor Research, the 10 Barrel Brewery, and Spy Optic. During the podcast, you're going to hear some ads for these brands. Some of them have codes in there that will save you money on products that you're going to need this season. Please use the codes and save yourself that money. Now, let's talk to Eric Jackson.
Hello.
E-Jack.
Yo, what's happening?
Not too much, man. How you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good, dude. Thanks for making some time.
Yeah, man. Sorry it's taken me so long. Shit's kind of been crazy.
Yeah, well, it's like the busy time of year, right?
Yeah. What time isn't a busy time of year? That's more like the question.
May, June, right?
Yeah. Not for me this year. I was freaking editing and trying to make a movie. It was really busy. May and June were super busy.
That's when you get the desk life work done, and then your stuff now is more the fun stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it's all pretty fun, right?
Yeah, but when you're sitting in a room for 10 hours staring at a screen, while it's cool seeing what you did, I'm sure eventually it gets mind-numbing and you got to do something to break up the monotony of that.
It was a bit of a mind bender for sure, man. Just mainly because I've never been in that position before. You know, back in the standard films days, we'd always go up to Tahoe and edit our parts, but that took a couple days.
That's sitting over his shoulder, right?
Yeah, exactly. And this one for alignment was like a whole nother can of worms that I had no idea what I was really getting into. I just kind of knew I wanted to do it, and I'd never taken all that responsibility on myself. So that was a humbling learning experience, let me tell you. It was work for sure, but it was also a lot of fun, you know.
How old are you at this point?
I'm 31.
It's tough picking up a brand new art form, like making a movie from start to finish. That's a tough process to learn that at your age.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in a sense I've been involved with it, you know.
You're a horse-o.
What's that?
You've been a horse-o.
Yeah, exactly.
And now you're the owner.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, huh? And I didn't edit it myself. I hired my good friend Ben Webb. He was on Brothers on the Run with John and I. And so him and his partner, Braden Dean, they were like the main editors. I just had my say in the direction and the production of it, I guess. So we made a good team. I think it was definitely a long, dark summer, but, you know, we made it happen.
I watched the movie, and you love snowboarding and you love fishing, and you need the yin and yang of both of those to make your life work. is what I got from that movie. A lot of awesome snowboarding, a lot of awesome fishing. I'm not a fisherman, so the fishing stuff didn't do it for me, but whatever. But you mentioned your brother John, and I think we should get this stuff out of the way in the beginning of the interview because I'm sure your whole life there's been a lot of intertwined conversation and interviews with you where there's a lot of questions about your brother.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm going to try to get a lot of my brother questions out in the beginning because this is about you, not him. My perception is that everything's intertwined for a while in your career, and not knowing either of you, but based on just who I've talked to and what I've seen over the years, you guys are totally different. John's, take this the right way, but he's the cooler one image-wise. When I look at him, it's dreadlocks, Red Bull. If he was in a band, he would be the lead singer and just oozing style. And on a snowboard, he's really fun to watch. You, on the other hand, if you're in that same band, you're the drummer. You're fun to watch, totally different. You're all like power and work ethic. And it seems like chasing your bigger brother for part of your career and then breaking out in your own world. But your image is like glasses, a beard, and fishing.
That's cool to see that from an outside view.
Is that kind of close?
I mean, I guess. I don't know. Like, really, with John and I, he's my older brother. He's my hero, you know. He's who I looked up to. Everything that he did, I wanted to do. And so he's, 4 years older than I am. So he starts snowboarding. Naturally, I want to start snowboarding. And as far as us being intertwined, that's actually like a pretty common question that I've got. Do you feel like you're in the shadow of your brother and whatnot? And to be 100% honest with you, I never felt that. I always just felt like we were just riding, like filming for Standard. We were just riding like when we were kids. We would just ride together. And yeah, he was really good. And I looked at myself like, well, I got 4 years to catch up to him, I guess,
Yeah.
So, yeah, you could go pretty deep into as far as timing and stuff. Like, he was kind of just on this whole nother level, winning Riders of the Year, Video Part of the Year. And I was on a totally different path where I was hurt a bunch and losing sponsors. So in that sense, yeah, maybe there was a little bit of me feeling in a shadow or whatever. But really, we're just brothers, There's brother rivalries. We bicker and argue about shit. I never looked at it like that.
From what I see, you guys are best friends as well. I mean, I watched that series where you guys went to South America.
Yeah.
I feel like you guys put that project together as almost like, hey, we don't get to spend that much time together, but we can pitch this thing to Red Bull. They're going to pay for it, and we can hang out like when we were kids again for months. Is that how your projects work?
I mean, that one was crazy, man. It's crazy looking back at Brothers on the Run because we were on the trip for like 7 months. That was like the dream trip. We knew we had it good. But looking back at it, you're like, oh my God, that was crazy. We actually got to do that. There were like so many wild adventures on that trip.
7 months. You got like $200,000 vehicles, it looked like. I don't know what they were, but they look pretty badass. And it was a trip that you went from Alaska to Chile?
Yeah, that was the plan. Basically, we started in Alaska, and the plan was to drive all the way to Ushuaia, which is like the southern tip of South America. It's like the furthest you can drive. But we were just way behind schedule. Basically, the format that we were doing was we were filming it, editing the show as we were on the road, and releasing it as we were on the road. So we thought we would just be like editing while we were driving, but the reality of that is we're in Central America and it's 100 degrees and there's freaking topes, which are speed bumps. There's speed bumps everywhere. Like computers are crashing, drives are crashing. We'd have to pull over for like 4 days. Our editors would grind it out, get an episode done, and then we keep going. So we were way, way behind schedule. So basically we made it to Nicaragua. There was this huge storm that hit Chile, and that was the whole goal, which was to snowboard in Alaska, snowboard in Chile, and then keep going. So we followed this storm down to Chile. So we had 2 trucks. We left them in Managua, Nicaragua, and flew to Chile, had a couple insane riding days, and then John blew his knee out on a jump. It was a shitty jump, but we both went too big, and I kind of tweaked my knee, but it was all good. But John blew his out, and that was the end of the trip. So Red Bull had to fly people down to Managua and have people drive both trucks back to LA. That was probably so terrible.
Yeah. How many people watch a series like that? Because there's a ton of budget put in. Red Bull's an amazing company that makes these creative projects happen.
Yeah.
How many people you think get their eyeballs on this series?
Dude, I think, I could be wrong, so don't quote me on this, but someone told me it got, like the whole series as a whole, someone told me it got over 2 million views. There was like 16 episodes.
I'm not going to quote you, but it's a podcast, so everybody's going to hear you say that by yourself. I guess you have to think of it like this. How much do you think a project like that costs start to finish? All expenses paid, all editing, all travel, everything.
There was so much. Those were the glory days, man. That was when the wells were flowing full of wine and booze. But no, I couldn't tell you.
Like $1 million project?
Dude, probably. They like bought those trucks. There were 2 of them. I don't really feel good about just throwing out a number. All I know is that we didn't pay for a thing. I mean, we had Clark Fiennes, just awesome legend guide. He was the guide of the year in Alaska. He's climbed Denali like 20 times or something. And he does a lot of production stuff with Red Bull now. But he was the logistics guy. He was on the whole trip with us. Great dude. Really knowledgeable in the mountains. And anytime we needed anything, we'd just be like, hey, Clark, we have some money. And it was just like, it was insane, man. Everything paid for, driving through Mexico and Central America, just surfing every day, partying a lot. Definitely a wild trip.
Sounds like a lifetime of memories in 7 months, but your whole life has been a lifetime of memories. And it starts in what, Crawley Lake, California?
Yeah, Crawley Lake. Yeah, that was where I was born, and it's about 10 minutes outside of Mammoth Lake.
Oh, you're right there.
Yeah, exactly. So Crowley's a really small town. There's one gas station. You're in Mammoth every day for everything, pretty much.
Parents skiers?
Yeah, my mom was a skier at first, and my mom is the main reason why John and I are so in love with snowboarding, because she really put us in the mountains at an early age.
Was your dad skiing too? Because I can't imagine living 10 minutes from Mammoth and not being a skier or a snowboarder.
And that's funny. My dad's from Louisiana, and he does not ski or snowboard. We're coming to an interesting point here, because I feel like my mom is the reason why I love snowboarding and mountains, and my dad is the reason why I love fishing and rivers. And my dad would always take us fishing, and we'd go on backpacking trips up to the lakes in the Eastern Sierra, and my mom was always the one who took us into the mountains. So that would explain my love for rivers and mountains and fishing and boarding.
Alignment Part 2. It all comes from the family.
It does, man. It sure does.
Do you play any team sports, or just getting into the mountains?
Yeah, played some soccer, played some baseball, but that ended pretty quick, man. I was dead set on being a professional snowboarder. I mean, I got my first sponsor when I was 11, I think.
Damn.
So it was like, that was it, man. Nothing else mattered. I didn't care about school. I didn't care about sports. All I wanted to do was snowboard. That was it.
Is it going home and watching videos and reading magazines and that stuff too?
Oh, 100%, man. At that age, you're fully reliant on your parents to drive you to the mountain and stuff. And so like every time we'd come back from snowboarding, we'd go to like Storm Riders or Wave Rave and ask for stickers. And the side of my wall was covered in stickers. And I love skateboarding too, right? I actually have an insane collection of old VHS snowboard and skate movies. The original, The End, the Birdhouse movie,
yep,
and all the Whitey films and Decade and, all the classics.
So I'm guessing if your mom skied, you probably skied for a couple years and then see your brother, and you have a sister who's older.
Yeah.
See them get into snowboarding and you're like, hey, I want to do this too?
I wanted to do whatever John was doing. Like, John got a skateboard. I skated before I was on a snowboard. And then he got one of the Craig Kelly Burton Airs, and him and my sister shared it. So he got it one day and she got it the next. And we had this little hill behind our house, and I don't know how old I was, 7 or 8, I would say, because I think I got my first snowboard when I was 9. I took John's board, and there's a bunch of snow behind our house, and I strapped the board on and rode down. I was just by myself out there and I was so hyped. I was like so excited about it. But yeah, that was my first time ever on a board. And then I got one for Christmas, that next Christmas. And that was pretty much that.
If you get your first board at 9 and your first sponsor at 11, you're killing it. And I'm guessing, is it like USA or whatever contest circuit that's coming through that you're doing?
Yeah. So we were homeschooled.
Your whole life?
I was, yeah.
Did that make you weird at all?
I don't know, man. Maybe.
With a lot of people around, is that weird to you?
No, man. Honestly, I think that if it wasn't for snowboarding, maybe. But like when I was 14 years old, I was going to like Japan and Switzerland. So I was learning about the world, how like traveling and like the world works when you don't usually get that opportunity at 14 years old, like no parents. One of the early times I had booze was in Japan with Alistair Schultz, and it was a LibTech trip. And basically they have vending machines there. And I was just like, well, I'm going to get they had ciders. I'd get these ciders out of the vending machines just because I could. I was 14 years old and I was like, there's vending machines full of booze here. This is crazy.
Yeah.
So just stuff like that where I was shot into the world through a cannon.
Yeah, when you start traveling, there's older kids, the opportunities for trouble, and it's not even trouble, it's fun.
Oh, there was some trouble.
You get in any trouble when you were younger and traveling?
Actually, John always was the one getting in trouble. I don't know if he just had bad luck or if he was just kind of a dumbass, but he got in all kinds of trouble. I've actually only been arrested once, and it was for drunk in public.
How old are you?
I don't know. It was me and Jack Matrani. We were in Southern California, and I was probably like 22, 23, something like that.
That's just part of life.
Yeah, like we got in a fight at a Mexican restaurant with some guys who were freaking talking shit.
Do you get in fights often? Because when I see you on screen and all the stuff I've read about you, you don't seem like a dude who would be a fighter by any means.
No, man, not anymore. But there was definitely a time in my life where I got in some fights for sure. Like this one's hilarious. Basically, we had got back from the bar and we were young and recently legal to drink. And there's this 24-hour Mexican restaurant in Encinitas called Filibueros. And it's Mods Johnson, Mods' girlfriend, Jack Matrani, and myself. And we lived walking distance to the saloon, just the bar there. We were drinking. I don't remember exactly what happened, but there was a girl involved. And these guys came and we almost fought in the line to the restaurant. And then it like got broken up and we all got our food and our crew goes and sits down at this table and we're like eating our food. And the crew that was talking shit comes up to us. And I don't remember exactly what was said, but it was something that was not acceptable. Just not acceptable. And there was these huge things of hot sauce. Like, you know, a ketchup bottle?
Yep.
They're real, like, flimsy, and they got the spigot, dude.
Yeah.
I picked this thing of hot sauce up, and I just doused the entire crew with hot sauce. And obviously a fight broke out after that. And the cops came in, and they only arrested the other crew. And we kind of thought we got away with it. So we just sat there and just finished our burritos. And then 5 minutes later, they came and got us too.
Oh.
But then we became friends with the guys and we all shared a jail cell. And it was like just the drunk tank. And we were like, that was stupid. I think we like went to the beach and went surfing with them afterwards. And it was all good. But yeah, that was like definitely a time in my life. But man, fighting's stupid.
It sure is, man. Use your words.
You never, ever know who you're going to get in a fight with. Like, I feel really lucky to have not gotten in a more serious fight. When you're young and maybe a little cocky and you're like drinking, you kind of just feel like you're invincible, but you are not invincible, man. I'll tell you that.
Well, I'm going to take a quick break and talk about my sponsors. And my first sponsor is Evo. If you've been to evo.com, you know that Evo creates the best user experience, has the best brands, offers a low price guarantee, free shipping on orders over $50, and a no-hassle return policy. Well, if you haven't noticed, they're also helping change the world of retail. The store creates events around the sports we're passionate about, they build communities of like-minded people, and they make a difference through giving back. Evo has stores in Denver, Seattle, and Portland, and soon they're opening up stores in Whistler. To find out more about in-store events or to buy the things you're going to need this winter at the best prices, head on over to evo.com. My next sponsor is Rescue Water. When I first started drinking rescue water, it was a bottle before bed after big nights and I'd wake up feeling awesome. But rescue water has so many more benefits than just after big nights. It's all about being proactive in your recovery. And rescue water is proactive recovery for when you get off the mountain, out of the gym, or done your sport. It's a difference that you will feel, and it will hydrate you so much better than your traditional sports drink. Next time you're at the store, grab a rescue water. Or head on over to rescuewater.com, enter the code RESQ Water TPM, that's all one word, and you'll get 20% off a 12-pack and become a believer. My next sponsor is Outdoor Research. I've been wearing their outerwear since I moved to Seattle in 2000 because it works better than anything else on the market. It's developed and tested in the Northwest, so you know it's gear you can trust. OR is committed to improving your experience with exceptional product, so you don't have to think about your gear while you're out on your journey. But don't just take my word for it. In this year's Powder Magazine Apparel Guide, there was one brand voted Apparel of the Year. It was Outdoor Research. So when you're shopping for outerwear this winter, get the best. Head on over to outdoorresearch.com. New customers, you will get 15% off your order. When you check out, enter the code Powell Movement. That's all caps, all one word, and valid until the end of the year. Those are my sponsors. Now let's get back into the podcast. We're going back to you're younger, you're competing a shitload. Who sponsors you at 11?
Let's see. My first sponsor ever was Mission 6. So that was Abe Gilreath and Nate Gilreath. Abe started it, and at that time in my life, the biggest influence, John and I actually weren't really friends at that time in my life. He was actually kind of a dick. Honestly, I get it, man. When you turn 16 and you get your license and you got your younger brother who's 12 and all he wants to do is come hang out with you and you're like, dude, I don't want to hang out with you at all. I want to go drive around and be with my friends, you know? So at that point in my life, from 11, 12, Matt Cass was by far the biggest influence in my life. He really took me under his wing, and he got me sponsored by Mission 6, Anarchy, Ignition Snowboards, and Jack's Garage. Those were my first 4 sponsors. I wasn't getting paid.
No, but you're getting a ton of product.
Oh, dude, you remember being a kid and getting product? That was like Christmas every time you got a package, dude. If the FedEx guy came, I was losing my shit. It was, oh my God, I'm getting free product. It was so crazy. Those are my first sponsors. And dude, you said it, USASA contest. That was it. I'd always just do the USASA contest in Mammoth, and then I'd go to the nationals. I think I won nationals, 2 years in a row. Won the pipe, won maybe slopestyle, and I won overall. That was definitely the start of it. And then I started going down the contest route. So I was doing ASTs and Vans Triple Crowns and stuff like that. And I never was really that good in contests. I'd make the top 10 and I'd make a little bit of money here and there, but I was never on the podium.
Were you into it? Were you stoked about being in the contests?
Not really. I didn't like the pressure on it. I really didn't. I mean, sure, I had fun, but pretty much the second I got a chance to start filming in the backcountry, we always rode POW as a kid, always. When it would snow, you'd go ride POW. That's what you would do. But my first chance, I went with Dave Downing, Mike Hatchett, and Matt Hammer. And we were in Tahoe, and I borrowed one of Mike Hatchett's snowmobiles, and we went snowmobiling. It was my first time on a snowmobile.
With a legendary crew.
Yeah, but I didn't know that. I did. I knew Dave Downing because obviously all the movies, and Matt Hammer was a friend of mine because he was in Mammoth, so it wasn't really too crazy. But yeah, looking back at it now, I'm yeah, that was crazy. Not really knowing how legendary the Hatchets are still. But I remember we went out to this zone in Tahoe called AST, and we hit a couple things. And I remember it was the first line I ever hit, and it wasn't even a line at all. It was like a cliff that you could pretty much look over the edge of it. But to me, though, at that time, it was crazy, man. So crazy. And I remember being on top of it and asking Mike, being am I in the right place? All this. And I remember him getting on the radio and being maybe you should take a better look at it before you get up there. And then I just said whatever, and I hit it. And it was kind of supposed to be this little double drop, a little 5-foot air to a little shelf and then probably another 5-foot air, like super small. And I just went like way too big and just splatted at the bottom. But then it kind of clicked a little bit and I went back up and I went way slower and I did it. And that was like a full eye-opening moment for me where I was like, man, this is definitely something different. And I got to go out with them 1 or 2 more times that year. I think that was when they were filming for Notice to Appear.
How old are you around then?
I mean, I didn't have a license. That was probably about 14 years old. I think that was the winter of when I was 14. Anyway, basically, I had one shot in their video and I was like, this is crazy, man. And, you know, John's got like a full part and he's killing it, but I'm trying to like understand what filming even is, you know?
Right.
Like I didn't even like know what that meant. And then I'm pretty sure the next year, John and I shared a part in Lost in Transition.
That when you start filming with Standard?
That was the first year I ever had a part. Yeah, it was a shared part with John.
Thinking back to how you're portrayed in those parts back then, you watch any of your Standard parts, there's some gold chains. I wouldn't say ridiculously big gold chains, but lots of rap music. Yeah. And it portrays you as someone that today you definitely aren't. When you look back on it, was it them creating that image for you, or was it you saying, hey, this is when I want to be perceived?
Image? I had no idea what an image was back then.
Sure.
I had no idea who I was. All I knew is that at that point, I was getting paid to snowboard. And yeah, man, like I probably thought like I was like the shit, you know? Like I was probably just a punk who was like, I don't know.
I mean, what kind of kid were you? Were you cocky? Did sponsorship get to your head at all when you were younger at that stage?
Probably, for sure, dude. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I would say that I was probably a little shit, man. I got in trouble all the time. And at that time, I remember John and I were flying to Waterville Valley for the USASA Nationals. I think that was probably the first time I'd ever gone away from like my parents, you know?
Okay.
I was probably 12. And on the way there, John bought Jay-Z, Hard Knock Life, and Dr. Dre 2001. And dude, we listened to those nonstop. And so when you're putting that kind of music in your head at a really young age, yeah, I thought I was like a gangster, dude. When I first got on Nike, I was ordering extra large Jordan gear. I had no idea who I was or what image I was portraying at all.
You just knew you were street?
I wasn't street.
I know. Snowboard street.
I was never hard, but I was just young and smoking weed and partying and getting paid to snowboard. Yeah, I was probably like a cocky little shit, for sure.
In terms of working with your sponsors, did you get along with them? You a hard kid to deal with, or are you professional on that level?
No, I always got along. I was never in much trouble. Really, the only time I ever got in trouble with a sponsor was with Quicksilver. And I was 16 years old. I had literally just got my license. And Quicksilver was doing a shoot in LA. And they got us all rooms at the Roosevelt. That's like a baller hotel in like Hollywood, on the Hollywood Strip. And basically, we had the rooms for 2 nights. We ended up getting done with the shoot the first day. So everyone left, and I was like, dude, I got this baller hotel room. I'm going to stay, dude. I just got my license, and I knew people down there. I had a bunch of skater friends. But, dude, we just had a mega party in the hotel room, like a big one. And we completely cleaned out the mini bar. There was like red wine spilt on like the carpet and stuff. Dude, Heath Kirchart was there. It was a crazy party for sure. And I don't think there was too much broken. I think the wine was the main issue, but it was like a big deal. There was like a couple $1,000 bill in damages.
Did they call your parents?
No, they never did. I just left. I didn't know. I was just like, all right, whatever. Like we just,
checked out.
Yeah, I didn't really think it was like that big of a deal. And then I get a call from the team manager at the time, and he just lost it on me. I thought I was getting fired for sure. I wrote him like this huge email. I was like, I understand if you fire me, like whatever. Because he just called me and was just like, what the fuck did you just do? I just caught this crazy bill. So that was actually a huge learning lesson for me, where I was like, all right, you can mess this up. You could totally burn bridges. I haven't thought about that in years, man. But to be honest with you, that was probably a really big blessing in disguise for me, because I feel like that put me in check a lot. And after that, yeah, I've always got along really well with everyone, really, especially my sponsors.
Okay. So high school's over for you.
I dropped out of high school. I never finished high school.
Oh.
I just went to Tahoe. It was one of those Tahoe years where I was filming with Standard. I was staying at Mike Hatchett's house. I was homeschooled, so I had all my schoolwork. It was my senior year. And it was just this like insane winter where we were just filming every day. And a couple weeks went by where I didn't do any schoolwork. And then a couple weeks turned into a month. And then I was just like, dude, I know what I'm doing in life. I'm going to be a pro snowboarder. This is what I want to put all my energy into. And so I just never finished.
And your parents, how'd they feel about it? Were they like, follow your dreams?
They obviously weren't like happy about that. But at the same time, they saw that I was focused and I had a path that I was pursuing and I was making money at the time. So it seemed like a pretty good option. But I think that they probably would have appreciated me to take a little bit more effort into learning school.
When they make the choice for you to be able to be homeschooled, then the option of not finishing, because you're homeschooling because of snowboarding, right?
Exactly. That's the only reason.
If you're doing that because of snowboarding and snowboarding becomes a viable option, school can wait. So you're a young, wide-eyed kid who wants to film as much as possible. And are sponsors cool with you not competing as much anymore? Because I feel like once you start getting into Standard, the contest might go to the wayside a little bit.
Yeah. I felt like at that time, there weren't a ton of young kids filming backcountry. And so I felt like that helped me a lot, where there were obviously the young up-and-comers who were doing contests. But at that time, Kazu was doing contests still, and he was also filming video parts. But there wasn't like a ton of them. So I kind of felt like I kind of found my little niche where I was just like, this is what I wanted to do. And I feel like the sponsors saw that and were supportive of it for sure.
And at the height of your career, I'm not saying that you're not at the height now, but the height of the dollars that you make, because I think you've had peaks and valleys.
For sure.
Who are your sponsors that are really making it happen when you're really doing well? And are you able to make over like $100,000 doing it?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I don't remember exactly what my contracts were, but I had over $100,000 contract with Nike for sure.
No way. Just with Nike.
Oh, yeah.
And speaking of them, I mean, they did so much for the sport. Not they didn't do so much. They come into the sport and they do all the right things when they're involved. They come in and they go out. And you were part of a cycle where they came in, and then that, I think, just ends for you. And how do you find out about Nike pulling out, and what are your thoughts on that? Because they're a big breadwinner for you.
Well, actually, that's not how it went at all. I was one of the original signers with Nike. Barrett Christie called me, and she was like, hey, Nike's getting back into snowboarding. We want you to be a part of it. And at that time, I was kind of like, well, Nike's already tried this. I was on Quicksilver at the time, but I wasn't really that stoked on Quicksilver. And I was also talking to Volcom at that time and Billy Anderson. Growing up with Billy and Jeff Anderson, I was always really into Volcom. If I was to pick, I would have picked Volcom. And so Nike was like, well, here's like a big ass paycheck. So I was kind of like, well, I feel like it'd be dumb to not take that. And so basically what happened with Nike was I had a 3-year contract with them, and then they kind of were telling me that I need to snowboard better. Basically, they were like not happy with the way I was snowboarding. I was injured a couple years in a row. There's a whole lot of long details.
We'll talk about that in a few minutes.
Oh, okay. I was just going to say we don't need to go into them, but yeah, man. So basically what happened there was I quit Nike. Before they pulled out, I quit and went to Adidas because Adidas had just signed Jake Blauvelt. And then basically they were trying to start a snowboard team. And I had just won video part of the year and I signed with Adidas. And so that was how that went.
You had that foresight to go and move somewhere else, but no one knew Nike was fully going to pull out. I mean,
no.
It seemed like they had a lot of the right people in place. They're making some cool product, it seemed like.
Oh, dude, Nike was so cool in the beginning. Those were some of the funnest times in my entire snowboard career. Straight up. Danny Cass, Justin Binney, Louis Vito. Like, dude, we had such, like, those were like the early years. And then like Nicholas and Gigi came on. But the first couple years of Nike, it was so much fun, man. They were doing some cool stuff. And then for me personally, I just went through a time with Nike where I felt like they didn't believe in me. I was injured. They gave me a 6-month contract and said, you better do good. And then let's see what happened. I had a contract with them and I was in the middle of filming my good look part, which ended up being the video part of the year. And in the middle of that winter, it was in like April or March. That was when my contract was up. I got a call from Nike saying, we're not re-signing you. And I was like, dude, I'm having like the best year of my life. That's crazy. And so basically what happened was I had to send them essentially a sponsor me video and be like, look, this is what I've shot this year. And so they extended my contract for 6 months. And at that point, I was just over it. And so as soon as my 6-month contract came up, I quit and I had already worked things out with Adidas.
Yeah, it's a really shitty thing to go through because in terms of how this whole career trajectory unfolds is, I mean, you're filming with Standard for Black Winter and you get hurt. Now, what happens to you? What's your injury? You don't have to go into super detailed about it, but what happens?
I was just riding the park at Mammoth, like this tiny little like 10-foot jump, and I did a switchback 5 and I landed just weird and it just tweaked my foot like really bad. And what it ended up just being like a mid-foot sprain. And I didn't really ride. Let's see, that actually happened while shooting for Aesthetica.
Okay.
The Aesthetica year. And so then I didn't ride for like a while. And then I ended up going to Terrace and going on a heli trip and filming. And I ended up getting the opening part for Aesthetica. And like, it wasn't like a crazy part or anything, but it was my first time ever getting like an opener.
Yep.
And so like, I was super proud of that, you know?
As you should be.
And then at that time was kind of the same time where Nike was like, well, you need to do 10s and double corks and stuff.
They're telling you what kind of tricks you have to do? Because, I mean, that's ridiculous.
I mean, they're telling me without telling me. We had a lunch meeting and it was basically like, you need to be more of a progressive snowboarder, which, whatever. They're paying me a lot of money, whatever. But I wanted to do all that stuff anyway.
But you got to be healthy to do it.
Yeah. And so then the next year I got a trainer. I got like all these like big hopes and dreams. And I was riding squaw and I did a front 3 off this cat track and I didn't realize it, but that cat track, it turned and there was another cat track below it and I just exploded. And that time I hurt the same foot, but this time I broke it and tore some ligaments. And then I was out most of that season. I did end up riding a couple days and got a little part, but like not much of one. Yeah, that was like Black Winter. Shit, you know, I think I mixed that up actually.
I think you did too.
You were right. Man, this is crazy. I haven't thought about this in so long. The Black Winter year was the year that I first hurt my foot. Mm-hmm. And then I was able to like still snowboard a little bit and I scraped together like a little part that was super mediocre. And then the next year, I think they were filming The Storming. And that year, early season, I hit a cat track at Squaw and completely blew up my foot and broke it and tore some ligaments. And that year I was out the whole season. And then I moved down to Southern California and just like rehabbed and just like didn't think about snowboarding at all. And the next year was when I started filming with people for Good Look. That was the first year I left Standard, which was pretty hard for me because I'd been with Standard for so long.
Yeah.
But it was just this opportunity to switch it up.
Is it an opportunity or so how does that work? Because a lot of times there's sponsors that'll pay for you to be in movies. It works differently, I guess, with every production crew. But is it something where Standard, do they want you to film with them and you're picking the people crew? Or is it sponsors saying, hey, we're going to sponsor the people movie? How does that work out?
Nike had a big say in that. Nike was like, you've been at Standard forever. It's kind of the same thing. Let's switch it up. And so then when I had a healthy year filming for Good Look, I was kind of just like, screw everyone, man. I just want to snowboard for myself. I don't care about what anybody's telling me. That was the first time I ever grew a beard. And I just moved to Whistler and we stayed in this shitty little A-frame cabin all winter and we filmed Good Look. That was for me because I needed to snowboard. I was filming for Black Winter and got hurt. And I think I rode like 8 days that season filming. And then the next year I didn't get to film at all. And so this year I'm like healthy and I like saw a sports psychologist. I was like mentally healthy, physically healthy. And you know, I just really wanted to snowboard like for myself. And thankfully it was a good winter. And that's kind of what happened.
I'm going to take one more sponsor break and I'm going to start with Spy Optic. Spy has been around since 1994, so they have a long history supporting snow sports. And this year they've produced the best goggle ever made, the Ace EC. That's a bold statement, but it's 3 lenses at the push of a button, and Eric Jackson's on the podcast this week, so I wanted to ask him if he had tried the Ace EC.
Dude, I have. That goggle is a game changer. It's crazy. It's pretty insane not having to ever change a lens. You literally have one lens, and it's go time for everything.
To get 20% off a pair of the game-changing Ace EC or any sunglasses or goggles, head on over to spyoptic.com, place your order, then use the code capital TPM, the number 20. That's all one word, and you will get that 20% when you check out. My final sponsor is another one of EJAC's sponsors. They're a brand that takes pride in the beer that they brew. They do a lot to support ski and snowboard culture, and most importantly, they love drinking beer outside. I'm talking about the 10 Barrel Brewery out of Bend, Oregon. And right now is the perfect time to pick up a 6-pack of the seasonal Pray for Snow Ale and check out 10 Barrel's movie, Pray for Snow, which went live on their website this week. You can find out all about the amazing beers, the 10 Barrel pubs in Bend, Portland, Boise, Denver, and San Diego, and check out the Pray for Snow movie over at 10barrel.com. Those are my sponsors. Now let's get back into the podcast. So you go through a 2-year period where it's got to put you mentally in a shitty place and you eventually get yourself back. Or maybe not a shitty place, but people are bummed on you and that's not always cool to hear.
I was in a dark place, man. I didn't know if I was going to be a professional snowboarder, getting my sponsors or cutting my contracts, and some are just cutting me completely. And I'm at this point in my life, early 20s, where you still don't really know who you are. At that point, I was starting to play music and I was like getting out of the gangster scene, but still just figuring out who you are. And so, yeah, that was definitely one of the darker places I'd ever been in my life for sure, just because there's a lot of doubt. I didn't know what I was doing. I was like, am I going to snowboard? Am I not? I don't know.
And if you have doubt, there's probably other people that have doubt as well. The great thing is you film with people and movie comes out, you end up with Video Part of the Year.
Yeah, so I was nominated for Rider of the Year and Video Part of the Year. And to be honest with you, I was like, that's awesome because I've never been nominated before. But it was the year that Art of Flight came out. So I was like, I'm not going to win anything. Like, that was the most monumental movie ever.
Yep.
So I went to the Writers' Poll Awards because I'd never been nominated before. So I was like, obviously I was going to go, but not expecting to win anything. And yeah, when they called my name, I was like tripping, dude. Could not believe it.
Yeah, I mean, is it almost like, what, me?
It's hard to even explain it. I remember that night, Danny Cass and Terrier were presenting the Video Part of the Year award. And I remember seeing Danny that night, and he was kind of acting weird, like he knew. And I remember being nervous. I remember being super nervous. And then they called my name, and I was just like, this is crazy. I can't believe that I'm actually standing up here. And especially because John had won the previous 2 years in a row. And so he was hurt. It was funny. It was kind of like I went from being hurt, John was winning everything, and then it went to him getting hurt and then me winning. It was just the way it went.
There's no validation, I guess, but I don't know if your sponsors or anybody else appreciate as much as you know how dark a place you were in years before to actually be able to go your first year back and prove that, hey, I've lost nothing. It was just injuries. Fuck you guys. I'm the exact same rider I used to be, if not better. I mean, it had to feel really good.
Dude, 100%. That was a pretty powerful time because during that season, I knew I was having a good season, but I never expected to get the closing part. You never really know until it all comes in the editing how good of a season you have or you don't have, you know?
Yeah.
And it just got me so fired up to snowboard, really, is what it did. Because I hadn't really ridden for the previous 2 years. And then I got this awesome opportunity to film with people and to live in Whistler. And like, I could walk to the river. I could go fishing on the down days. And we'd snowboard when it was good. That was just one of the best seasons ever, man. And then to win Video Part of the Year was crazy because wasn't expecting any of that ever. And then directly after that, I quit Nike and went to Adidas. So it was definitely like a high point in my career for sure.
You put out a part every year since then. It seems like you've been healthy, which is an awesome thing, and you're in a good mental space.
Totally.
You put out a part with Absinthe, Trans World. I think Jake had a video you put out a part with.
Yeah.
But the biggest production of your entire career, and I've had a few interviews recently, you've done movies with Travis Rice, which means it's the biggest part of their career as well. But the fourth phase, does anything else you work with even compare to the production of a video like that?
As far as the production, no way. That was crazy, man. Yeah, that was so wild being in the mountains with 50 Pelican cases.
Yeah.
That was insane. Definitely like a very good and positive experience for me because I got to spend a lot of time with Travis and I've always looked up to him. And those couple years filming with him changed the way that I looked at mountains, changed the way I looked at what was possible, changed the way I approached my snowboarding as a whole. So like, that's what I'm most grateful for, being a part of that film.
When I think of his films, your brother's been a part of a bunch of those. Is your brother injured at that point? Is that why he's not a part of this? Would both brothers be in the movie if he was healthy?
Yeah, it's funny. Actually, before Art of Flight came out and then Trav was working on the funding and the proposal for the fourth phase, and everyone kind of knew that he was doing another one. And Trav and I were at a marketing meeting at LibTech on the Olympic Peninsula in Washington. And basically he pulled me aside and was like, look, man, we're doing this first trip to Japan and then we're going to Russia. And it was kind of a toss up between you and your brother. Your brother's been hurt for the last couple of years. You've been riding really well. But I just like want to tell you that I'm giving your brother a chance to be a part of this again. It was kind of like a blow. I was like, damn, dude. I actually thought I might be getting the call right there.
It's like, you have to tell me this? Why don't you just not tell me?
No, but I respect that about Travis. He's just a straight up, he's going to tell you what's going on.
But you had no idea that he was even thinking about you being in it before that, did you?
I don't know. I had been hitting him up because I felt like I was riding good and it was kind of a dream of mine to be like, when That's It, That's All came out, I watched that and I was like, I envisioned myself being on that screen, you know? And then The Art of Flight came out and like seeing John on there, I was like, man, I wanted that. So I had reached out to Travis and been like, dude, let's do this.
Okay.
So he told me, we're bringing your brother on. And dude, I want the best for John. I was psyched. Obviously, I wanted to go on that trip, but I was like, dude, that's my brother. Like, I'm psyched. And then John and I were both in Japan. I was shooting with Adidas. John was with Burton, I think. And basically, I get an email from Travis, and it was titled, "You're in." And I like click on it, and he was like, your brother blew his knee out. Go to the Russian consulate in Tokyo and get a visa and come to Russia. I didn't even know John got hurt, but they were flying out to Russia in like 3 days. So I like literally got in a car, went to the Russian consulate, applied for a visa, got it the next day because it was the Olympic year. So they were just pumping visas out. Normally that like takes a long time.
Yeah.
Literally got it the next day and flew out to Russia the next day. So it was a crazy chain of events. I didn't know anything about the project. Trav was really secretive about it, where we were going. We like had to sign non-disclosure agreements. Like I knew nothing other than this is kind of something that I'd always dreamed about.
And the movie is about the hydrological cycle. I'm not smart enough to even know what that means. You know, I've seen it. And going into it, do you have a thought process of anything like that? Or is that just Travis and eventually you adapt some of that learning from him?
Oh, dude, I had no idea about what his goal was for that film until probably the next year when we went to Alaska. I knew bits and pieces, but I think that story kind of evolved as the filming came. And my focus was to just snowboard as hard as I could and get the best footage for this film. And I think that kind of worked out to my advantage a little bit because those guys were just coming off a trip in Japan, and I don't think it was the smoothest trip ever. And then we went straight to Russia. And so I'm just like fired up, dude. And in reality, Russia was a complete botch. We didn't get anything at all. Like, we barely snowboarded there. And so that was definitely harder for everyone else than it was for me, because I was still just like, what am I doing here? This is crazy. We're in Russia. Dude, Russia was like the craziest trip ever. We were camping. We did these snow camping trips to the base of this erupting volcano. Like, it was crazy, dude. That was one of the most insane vacations ever. We were taking a heli every day. We'd go snowboarding. We'd have all our surf gear in the heli, and we went and surfed a wave that had never been surfed before. That was one of the craziest experiences ever. Snowboarding was terrible, but it was really cool. And just to be a part of that trip and be a part of the film, they put so much money into that trip. Like, that was going to be the low point in the film, you know? And then basically we all went home, debriefed. Trav was like, hey man, let's go to Baldface and just like ride. And so we went to Baldface and did this thing with Travis in the history of Baldface. And after that, he was like, let's go to Alaska. And so directly from Baldface, we went to Alaska. That was a hard trip too, man. The 2 years that I shot with Travis were the two worst winters I've ever seen ever in my whole life. It was like really bad. But with that being said, this was my dream, you know? So I was just still just frothing, like so stoked. I just wanted to ride everything and as good as I could. And we rode what we could with the snow conditions that we had, and that was what we got. But I think just in general, it seemed like that was a really hard movie to make. There was a lot of cooks in that kitchen. That was a tough one.
Those years, like you said, if you look across the board on ski or snowboard movies, nobody had great conditions. There was, I think, 1 or 2 movies where people might have nailed their trips, but it was gambling.
Yeah.
Going places and praying, and most of the time it didn't happen those years.
Those were 2 really hard years. I thought that film had potential to be a lot different than it came out.
But like you said, when there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, that'll happen. And we've been going for a long time, not my standard interview, but you have a lot to say, and you can tell just by the passion in your voice how much you love snowboarding. You've had a beard for a long time. Beards are kind of played out. How long do you think you'll keep that beard?
Beards are played out? Really?
I read it on Vice last week.
Oh, man. Well, I had a beard before beards were cool. I think I started that trend.
What year did you have your beard?
I don't know. Whatever year I filmed Good Look, I've had one ever since then.
2011, so that's when beards came in?
Must have been. I don't know. Dude, I like my beard. If there's one thing I can do good in life, it's grow a beard. So I just run the beard. I don't know. I usually shave it like once or twice a year.
Do you ever shave it like people do with shrubbery, where you can make shapes and stuff out of it? Because you have enough hair where you could do whatever you wanted.
Oh, yeah, I could braid this thing. I haven't really done too much with it, but man, it's nice. It like keeps you warm in the winter.
Do you have a girlfriend?
I'm married.
Okay.
Yeah.
So at this point in the show, I'm going to jump into something I call inappropriate questions.
Okay.
I talked to Shaun McKay. He's someone that you know from filming with people, and I'm sure you know him from after that as well. And Shaun put together 3 inappropriate questions for you.
God.
Shaun's an old pro snowboarder, awesome guy. And here we go with his first one.
All right, Shaun.
I think when he was still filming for Standard, he started coming up to Washington and riding Mount Baker a lot. And he kind of was hanging with Nate Lynn. He's a local Baker hardcore dude who's super gifted snowboarder, kind of a awkward dude as far as personality and like marketing himself wise. He was really good, and he showed a lot of people around Baker and did a lot of good for people. And he is a good stand-up dude. But I know Eric had a little funny bout where he was staying at his house, and I think he was like stoned in his bathtub or something and fell asleep and overflowed the bathtub and like totally flooded Nate's house in the middle of the winter. I don't remember if I ever asked Eric about it or like what his explanation of it was or like what his story is with that whole thing and what he ever did for Nate to make up for that. Maybe just ask him to explain what happened in that bathtub on that fateful day he overflowed it?
Yeah, well, first of all, Nate and I are great friends. I was actually just on the phone with him a couple minutes ago. But really, the story that happened there was we were out snowmobiling and I hit this drop and there was like this tree stump and I nailed this tree stump after I landed and I shifted my sacrum. I didn't know that at the time, but like my ass was just like completely black and blue and I could barely walk. And so I was staying at Nate's house and he was like, dude, you should take an Epsom salt bath. So I was taking all these Epsom salt baths because it was drawing out the bruising and I could barely walk. Basically what happened, it was me, Nate, and Sammy Lubke. And I turn on the bath. So I'm running the bath water and we're watching one of the standard movies. Someone's part came on and I was like, oh, I want to watch this. And at the time, Nate had some pretty green tendencies and we may have smoked a little right then. And I just completely spaced. We're all three just sitting on the couch and I hear the water kind of like overflowing and it was actually in a trailer. Yeah, like obviously get up, jump up and start trying to do everything I can to start cleaning up the water. Yeah, he was that was the most angry I've ever seen him. I felt bad, but dude, I was a kid and I was stoned and I was hurt. I could barely walk. What are you going to do?
Ejak was going to take a bath, but then he got high.
Pretty much, dude. That's what happened there.
All right, so we will jump into question number 2.
All right.
I was going to ask him what his thoughts were on snowboarding under the influence of marijuana, if he's done it, what he thinks of it, and if he condones such an act.
So that ties right into where we were just at. Do you smoke a lot of weed, or did you?
I don't smoke weed anymore. I smoked so much weed in my lifetime, I just got totally smoked out. It's not for me anymore. But at that time, especially that season with McKay, there was definitely some wizard smoke rolling around the mountains that year, for sure.
And what are your thoughts on riding under the influence of it?
I was never really like... Okay, in the standard films days with John and I, yeah, we would roll up to the sled spot and smoke a joint and we would film high all day. But that was when I was real young. And then that stopped. Like that year with McKay, we'd snowboard all day. And then towards the afternoon, maybe it'd be like, yeah, fire one up. Or like if it was like a super cloudy, powy pillow day or something, like maybe. But it was that winter in particular was really serious for me where I was focused. I had goals. I had all my tricks written down that I wanted to do, even down to what grabs I wanted to do with the tricks. I was really focused that year, so I wasn't really burning and bored too much.
Okay. We will go with the final inappropriate question.
What's the status on his jewelry company? I know him and his brother had started, I don't know what it was called or what it was, but I remember him having some axe or something he was dangling from a chain he was wearing not too long ago. Well, shit, it was a long time ago when we were filming for People, but I remember he was saying they were starting like some jewelry company, so I was wondering what the status of that was.
Yeah, Jax is still alive for sure. That's definitely something that John is more passionate about than I am. That was like all John's idea. He was like, we're going to start a jewelry company. It's going to be really cool. I'm like, okay. At that time, I was probably 20 years old. I was kind of in that stage where I didn't really know if I was going to be a pro snowboarder or not. Not the best place in my life. And also that was a time that I really was looking up to John and whatever he was doing, I wanted to be a part of. So naturally I said, yes, I wanted to be a part of that. We've done some cool things with it. Like we raised a bunch of money for an orphanage in Nicaragua. But what I realized with Jax was that it requires all of your time. That is a full-time job to run a company of any kind.
Yep.
And the reality of that is that John and I both had full-time jobs already. So that one was pretty hard to like find the time and the motivation to really go hard at that. But I know John's definitely still working on it. He was just talking to me about it the other day. I'm not really exactly sure what his plans are with it, but it's still breathing, dude. They're still cold. Who knows, man? Maybe there'll be a big Jax Union revamp in the near future here.
Do you guys wear other accessories? Are you guys into scarves or anything like that?
Not really. And that's another thing. Like, I'm not really a big jewelry guy.
It's a weird thing to get into jewelry if you're not a big jewelry guy.
But at the time, though, I was still kind of gangster. And so I was like, oh, like these big gold chains. It was actually really cool. It was more about building these pieces for charity, which is essentially what we did with the Brothers for Hope, and a way to actually give back and do something good. That was really what had me the most excited about the jewelry company. Those weren't very inappropriate.
No, they weren't really inappropriate. I mean, we talked a little bit about weed. Shaun doesn't get very inappropriate, but you talked about arrests and you weren't really shy to share anything. One thing I didn't bring up, you are on Spy Optic.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have a signature model with them?
Yeah, man. Spy has been so good to me. They're such a rad company. We designed a signature goggle and a signature fishing glasses, which is done really well. Polarized lenses with like a really good rose tint so you can spot your fish pretty well. And yeah, man, Spy's really cool company for sure.
I want to thank you for your time, man. I know this is the busiest time of your year. It's the beginning. It's not the busiest because they'll just keep getting more busy. But refreshing conversation. It seems like your careers had ups and downs and there was no real battle with your brother at all. It seems like you guys are just good friends and you happen to get more exposure, I would say.
Yeah. I would say that John and I are completely different snowboarders, and we have made different names for ourselves and gone in completely different paths. We ride differently. We look at terrain differently.
You're all power. You put a lot into a turn.
Yeah, thanks, man. But I just think that I know we kind of started with talking about John, and then I guess now we're going to end with it too. But I feel like in the beginning, like I never really felt like there was that pressure to be better than him or anything. We had a competitive relationship for sure. But as both of our lives played out, I just feel like we went our own paths and made our own names. And yeah, I'm my own type of rider and he's his, you know?
Yeah, so we've already said fighting is bad and you shouldn't fight, but who would win in a fist fight between you and your brother? No rules.
Oh, he'd win for sure. He's huge. He's way bigger than me.
Well, the little brother can never beat up the older brother anyway. Even if he was smaller, he would still find a way to destroy you because he's the big brother.
Yeah, maybe.
All right, man. Well, you have a great Friday night. I thank you for your time, man, and I'll look forward to what you put together this season.
All right, man. Cheers.
So that was time with Eric Jackson, another interview with an athlete who has an older brother. And like the other brother interviews I've done, there was no big rivalry between the brothers. Eric battled through his injuries and then he carved out his own path in the snowboard world, completely different than John's. And while I was doing my research on EJack, everyone said that he was such a great guy and that I'd like him a lot. Well, after the interview, it's easy to see why so many people said so many great things. He's a laid-back dude who just wants to snowboard, and he gets that snowboarding happens to be his job. So that was time with Eric Jackson, and maybe I'll get John on the show at some point, maybe not. But that was the show for this week. Now I want to ask you to review me on whatever platform you listen to me on. Tell your friends about the show and support my amazing sponsors. They are Evo, Rescue Water, the 10 Barrel Brewery, Spy Optic, and Outdoor Research. I hope everyone had a very Merry Christmas and have a great week, everyone.